You talk about blacks and Latinos and basically how we got here, the challenges we experienced. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Oh, for sure. I'd love to.
This is a familiar scene in America these days. Arson is our fastest growing crime, affecting the lives and property of millions of people. No city is immune. This is the Bronx in New York. 1.5 million people live in this borough, equal to the population of Houston or Washington or San Diego. It's the home of the New York Yankees, the Bronx Zoo, and the Grand Concourse. It has also become the arson capital of the world. Once that smoke on the horizon signified industry, progress, jobs. Now it means someone is burning down a building, a landlord for profit, a tenant for revenge, junkies, vandals. It happens 30 times a day, and the flames are the signal of a national disaster. In the next hour, we'll see what fire is doing to the Bronx and its people. It's a report from one place in one city, but the forces at work here are no longer unique to the Bronx. The fire here is the fire next door.
It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Broken glass everywhere, people on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise, got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice.
This is important information, and after all, it is the 50th year of hip hop, right? Yeah. And so I'm glad that you asked that, because there's more to DJing than winning a competition. And a lot of times when I sit down with podcasters, I get asked questions like, when did you win your first battle? What inspired you to DJ? And there's backstories and history to how I ended up sitting here in front of you that goes as far back as the Great Depression, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know wow is the response that I expect, because what does the Great Depression have to do with Kool Herc and Africa Bambaataa?
Right.
But there's a lot of synergy between the two, although there's a huge time gap. Okay. And what I mean by that is this. In 1925, an urban planner named Robert Moses was hired by New York City to contribute to the government's urban renewal strategies that were starting to be implemented in New York and in parts of California, Detroit, Chicago, across the country. And this is now post Jim Crow America, right? So, you know, we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I know we have like guests here sitting in on this podcast, and I know you guys, whether you're black, white, have heard about Jim Crow laws, laws that existed to further the inequality that minorities, quote unquote, were experiencing, predominantly black, let's say. So urban renewal plans basically revolved around, in New York City, I'll speak about New York because that's where I'm from.
Right.
During the Great Depression, that created a lot of slums.
Right.
And the Bronx, New York was one of those areas in New York City that was affected by the Great Depression. Middle-class people lost jobs, couldn't pay their rents. The city itself started suffering.
Davidson Avenue in the West Bronx. For years, it was a desirable community of middle-class families. While the South Bronx was dying, this was a good place to live. But decay spread quickly through here. Fire engines have come again and again. Well-constructed buildings are now abandoned and bricked up in a feeble effort to discourage vandalism. For all their drama, fires are not the story. Arson is a symptom of a far deeper condition that persists here after the firemen have left. Society has collapsed.
And as a result, extreme poverty, cities neighborhoods were not being manicured, and because of that, slums evolved, right? Robert Moses was hired to clean up the city, right? And he was an urban planner, and so what he did was he supervised the construction of highways, of parks, of beaches in New York City and in the suburbs of New York.
Right.
So in 1925, he began supervising the construction of the Southern State Parkway. Now, how is that relevant to hip hop? This is how. Robert Moses, to put it bluntly, was a racist, but he was put in this position to rebuild New York City.
The South Bronx. It has all the superlatives. Highest crime, poorest people, greatest unemployment, worst blight, and the world's record for arson. In just 10 years, more than 30,000 buildings have been set ablaze and abandoned here. Many of them good, solid apartment houses built to last hundreds of years. These were the homes of New York's working people, the Germans, Irish, Jews, and Italians who paused here on their way to the suburbs and to the American promise fulfilled.
Jim Crow really didn't affect the North the way it did the South.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that New York adapted Jim Crow mentalities, a Jim Crow mindset, and applied it to urban renewal. In 1948, Robert Moses started supervising a new project, which was the construction of the Cross Bronx Expressway. Now we're talking about the Bronx, New York City. And what this guy did was he basically supervised the demolition of neighborhoods where blacks and Latinos lived, and Irish and Polish and Jewish. The Bronx after World War II was actually very diverse. So I would say around the 1940s through the 1970s, after World War II ended like in 1945, a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of black people from the South started to migrate up north and settle in New York City, in places like the Bronx, New York.
Huge numbers of blacks and Puerto Ricans arrived as business, industry, and the middle class left. Jobs were fewer and fewer. Welfare replaced work, and the poor were trapped with nowhere to go. Higher costs, lower profits, and the peculiar chemistry of poverty caused landlords to flee their building.
Being that Irish people were already there, Jewish people were already there, Polish, Italians, now there's this influx of Puerto Ricans and blacks. To be honest with you, and unfiltered, white people started to kind of be like, well, what's going on? There's this influx now of like Puerto Ricans and blacks, and like, you know, I'm here because I'm amongst my own, right? And so I raised that to say that white flight started to take place once the construction of these highways began. What ended up happening was in this urban renewal planning that started to take place in New York City, there was this indirect negative effect on quote unquote minorities, specifically blacks and Puerto Ricans, because now they're displaced, right? And this dude, Robert Moses, is instructing the supervisors of these highways, for example, the Southern State Parkway, to build the bridges connecting one town to the other on these highways low enough so that city buses couldn't drive through there, because he didn't want quote unquote minorities to get to the beaches. So he's literally destroying neighborhoods, but then trapping black and Puerto Rican people inside the Bronx.
We are creating here what the Romans did in Rome. We are creating a permanent underclass of unemployed and desperate people. They're kind of invisible. You don't see them because they drop out of they stop looking for jobs. They drop out of everything but the welfare rolls. They drink and they try to escape the reality of their daily experience. And of course, and here we live with them. But they're all dressed up and no place to go. The society has no place for it. But now everything is being done by machines, and the second industrial revolution has sort of replaced unskilled human labor. And that's the only leg they can get up on the ladder. So they're really in trouble.
The history of this culture that we called hip hop has its roots that are just way deeper than just a guy named Kool Herc that decided to do a party. It's like, what brought Kool Herc to the Bronx?
Right.
What brought Puerto Ricans and blacks to the Bronx? It was this opportunity, the American dream, a chance to make money, find work.
Right.
But because of that influx of minorities, white people got scared, left, took advantage of the roads that were being built by Robert Moses, an urban planner in New York City who was racist.
Right.
And you have the Bronx, New York now, that's basically a slum. Remnants of the Great Depression are affecting it. The destruction of neighborhoods because of highways like the Cross Bronx Expressway and the Southern State Parkway affected it. So like hip hop is a product of these policies that our government implemented. And so it's important to touch on these things on the 50th year of hip hop, because there's more to this story than a guy deciding to cut breaks back and forth.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
If you were assigned to Vietnam in 1970, what would be the challenge that you face? It would be to communicate to the American people the fact that our nation is involved in a great moral struggle, in a great moral dilemma. And what you were really saying is, America, take a look at it. For heaven's sakes, look what you're doing to yourself. Look at the moral dimensions of the struggle. And if that is the way you choose to go, at least acknowledge it.
It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Broken glass everywhere. People on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with the baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far, cause a man with a tow truck repossessed my car. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars go by, roaring as the breezes blow. A crazy lady living in a bag, eating out of garbage pails, used to be a fag hag, such a dance to tango, skip the life and dango. A zircon princess seemed to lost her senses, down at the peep show, watching all the creeps, so she could tell her stories to the girls back home. She went to the city and got so did it. She had to get a pimp, she couldn't make it on her own. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
My brother's doing fast on my mother's TV. Says she watches too much, it's just not healthy. All my children in the daytime, Dallas at night. Can't even see the game or the Sugar Ray fight. The bill collectors, they ring my phone and scare my wife when I'm not home. Got a bum education, double-digit inflation. Can't take the train to the job, there's a strike at the station. Neon King Kong standing on my back, can't stop to turn around. Broke my sacroiliac, a mid-range migraine, cancer membrane. Sometimes I think I'm going insane, I swear I might hijack a plane. Don't push me, call, I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
So what I would say is, America, take a look around. Look what you're doing in your ghettos. You're creating a permanent underclass of disaffected and poor. drugged on alcohol, on welfare, living in bombed-out situations, an educational system that doesn't educate, a bureaucracy that doesn't respond, the sanitation doesn't clean, the police don't police. We're all here, we're all very visible, and I suppose some of us are working reasonably hard, but the fact of the matter is we're all failing, and it's just a holding operation. Look around you.
Look around, and on any day you will see a major fire set by an arsonist. There is one every hour.